Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. So, today I got responding in general to an article from Bladdermouth.net. It boggles the mind how little history people actually learn. I mean, in theory, at least in the US and Canada and Europe and most of the world, you go to school and study some history. And you would think the events of World War II would be something significant because it's probably one of the three or four most significant events of the 20th century. But leaving that aside, I came across this article on Bladdermouth entitled Motorhead Guitarist Defends Lemmy Against World War II German Socialist Accusations. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing World War II German Socialist Accusations to avoid Mama Susan's, censorship. But in fact, I always tend to call them that to remind people that they are in fact socialists. And socialism is responsible for most of the mass murders of the 20th century. With that being said, this article isn't so much directly about that as about not knowing history and whatever. So we'll get on to it. Now, the article itself, and I'll briefly, I'll link it below so you can read the fullness of it. But to summarize, on Twitter, someone said they love Lemmy despite his World War II German socialist sympathies, and Lemmy's former bandmate and several others defended him against that, claiming no, he's not in any way like that, blah, 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 And then, of course, the article doesn't leave well enough alone under the pretense of providing balance. They pull out over a decade ago when David Draymond of Disturbed, who is Jewish, by the way, and spoken against anti-Semitism many times, which he rightly should do so, and he had strong orders for rock musicians who collected World War II German socialist memorabilia, and he didn't understand it. Blah blah blah. You can read the article for that take on it. Okay, the point I'm getting at here is this. Okay, this article, despite the pretense of being balanced, is in fact an either intentional or unintentional hit piece, and let me explain why. I would bet that many of you have heard a saying along the lines of, "Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it." Of course, many will often say that even those who know history are doomed to repeat it. And that's true to an extent, because in reality, nature, of which humans are a part, is relentlessly cyclic. Humans have been spending most of their week doing the same things for over 100,000 years. Consider, you spend out of 168 hours in a week, more than 75% of them sleeping, eating, pooping, dealing with your clothes, gathering resources to survive, which in the modern day means working, and in the past meant farming, or even further back, hunting and gathering, whatever. And in reality, there's a small percentage of that time that can actually change. We have to do the same activities our ancestors did 100,000 years ago just to survive. Yeah. Although, interesting note, since the industrialization of the world, that percentage of free time has increased significantly. But that's a different topic. The thing is, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat is not the actual quote. The quote, which is attributed to George Santayana, actually is, "Those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it." What he actually meant is that if you're unaware of the repetitive nature of humans, which we record via history, you won't notice the repetition and will tend to make the same mistakes or commit the same wrongs as humans did in the past. That's why history is important. Now, history itself has been under attack by political ideology for thousands of years, of all sorts. It's a very core truth that the victors write the history books. And countless cultures and countless continents across all the ethnicities of humanity, that's been occur. As soon as someone wins the war, they try to erase the existence of the enemy in some fashion. Now, right now, historians function out of places that are dominated by left-wing socialist ideology, so they need to control the history. Anytime someone out of that control, like, for example, the band Sabaton or the musician Lemmy Kilmister, who maintain their own historical records, and in Sabaton's case, often sing about them, they come under attack in some capacity. That's what this article represents. On no basis of actual actions can anyone ever say that Lemmy is some sort of sympathizer to World War II German socialists. In fact, saying something like that is slander and defamation of character at the very least. Okay, and if they had the guts, they would claim to some sort of evidence, but none of evidence exists. Of course, he's not like that. As I mentioned, the article brings up David Draymond because, as a Jewish person, he is rightly outspoken against World War II German socialism. But then they take some comments he made, which are really ignorant. Okay, where he doesn't understand why people keep historical records and try to use them to provide balance. In this article, that's the writer taking Draymond's comments. Lest we not forget, the World War II German socialists killed 6 million Jewish people, but we must also remember that the first 1.8 million people murdered in the camps that the World War II German socialists established in Poland were Polish Catholics. Germany wanted to clear Poland out of natives because the socialists of Germany had made alliance with socialists of Russia to divvy up Poland. We must also remember many other groups killed via the Holocaust, and right? I'll link to the Wikipedia article to that below. But the victims of the Holocaust were not the only people killed by the World War II German socialists. Right? I have another Wikipedia article that links to all of the people killed as a result of those events of World War II. And if you scroll down, you'll see a detailed table which has the total deaths by nation. The United Kingdom, Lemmy's home country, had almost 377,000 deaths, of which 68,000 were civilian deaths, and those civilian deaths are attributed directly to military action or crimes against humanity by World War II German socialists. Why would Lemmy have any sympathy for the people who killed almost 68,000 of his countrymen? Lemmy was born in 1945 on the heels of World War II. He would have grown up with recovery from World War II German socialist aggression in the forefront of the news and his culture. He had probably had older relatives. I mean, his father was a chaplain who served in World War II. He would have been around people who served there. I grew up in that same. I was born in '73, and my older relatives who fought in World War II constantly talked about the horrors they encountered and that sort of thing. So I'm free, and I could attribute that. I heard that from many other people who I only peripherally either read things they write or talk about in the distance. So that was a common thing after World War II to educate the children and grandchildren of the horrors of what the World War II German socialists did. Right? So, if people like this article writer or David Draymond or anyone else is going to smear him, not that Draymond was smearing him intentionally, I think he was just speaking out of ignorance on everyone, not just historians and universities. All of us have an obligation to preserve history in some sense. Whether it's a small thing like making a video like this to point certain facts out, or you can collect some memorabilia and store it for posterity, or any other thing you can do. We all have an obligation to preserve history, lest we all be doomed to repeat it. And that's the fundamental truth here, okay? Lemmy was a historian as a hobby. He collected what he had, and he was not sympathetic to World War II German socialists. I'm Matt. This has been Earl 73. Comment down below if you have any questions for me about this video. Please read the links. They are enlightening and provide the full scope of the evils performed by the World War II German socialists. Well, not the full. They don't even encompass the full scope. There's even more beyond that you could attribute to them. Share this video if you enjoyed it. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. Thank you. I am out of here.